I fed a bunch of sourdough starter last night so that I could bake a bunch of different things this morning, and take a look at it. It's starting to deflate. It's pretty flopsy, very wobbly, a little bit thinner than I would like it to be, because really you're like, oh, the goal is that your sourdough starter would be at its highest rise when you go to bake. So what do you do? What do you do if you fed all this starter and life happens and you're like, do I start over? What do I do with it? Don't start over. So my goal was to use this morning, and right now it's no longer morning. It's 5 p.m. But here's the thing. This is not past the point that it can still make our dough rise. And the goal is that what we know now is this starter is active. It completely bubbled up, rose. It was like at its highest rise this morning. And so I'm not gonna start all the way over, because I know this starter is strong. And so what I'm gonna do is into the recipe it goes. If this happens to you, you feed your starter, it hits its highest rise, and then by the time you get to it, you get to actually making the dough or English muffins or whatever it was you were gonna make, it has begun to deflate. If it's still the same day, use it. It's fine, because think of it this way. When you put this sourdough starter into your recipe, you are essentially feeding it again, a massive feeding. Now, here's when I wouldn't use this. If it has deflated to the point that it's basically back to where it started at, then at that point, I would essentially begin the feeding process again. And just wait. You don't have to do it right away. Like, let's say this had deflated all the way back down to where it was when I first fed it last night. Then tonight, I would basically start the process again. You're gonna have some extra discard. You're gonna take that discard out of the bowl that you don't need, and then you're going to feed just an original portion again. So that would be like, if last night I put 100 grams of discard in here, and then I fed it 400 grams of flour, 400 grams of water, because I'm making multiple things. This was supposed to be my baking day, and it ended up being my office day. So what I would do is I would take out all of the starter that's in this bowl except 100 grams, and then I would feed that 100 grams. So if you ever ask the question of like, my starter failed or it hit its rise and it deflated, and I say repeat the first feeding, repeat that first process, that means we have to get all this extra starter out of the bowl, because we don't want to feed that much. The reason that you don't want to feed that much is because if I fed this amount of starter, which is now would be 900 grams of starter. If I fed this amount of starter, I would end up with like 1,800 grams of starter. And I'm not some micro bakery. I don't want that much starter. And that's one of the things, honestly, it's one of the things I hear people say, is that they're like, I feel like I'm wasting so much flour. So the trick to not wasting flour is to feed smaller amounts of starter, so that what you have when it has hit its highest rise is what you need for your recipe. And when you go to repeat the feeding, get your starter down to only 50 grams, so that when you feed it, you aren't ending up with these massive amounts of starter. And don't forget, all of this stuff in here that we're not, like, let's say I was gonna refeed it. I was gonna start that process again. Everything that I take out of this bowl that I don't need to feed again is okay to put in my jar in here. It is all okay to add back in here. I have heard so many people say that somebody told them, don't ever mix your discard with your original mother starter. I don't know why they told you that. That is coming from somebody who's being a stickler to some rule from some master sourdough maker. Maybe not even a master. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to figure out why somebody would say that. So here's the thing with sourdough that you need to remember. There's lots of ways to do it right. And when somebody gets really, really focused on all the minutia of it, is when it kind of sucks the joy out of it, at least for me. And here's my goal. My goal is to make this fit our life. My goal is to encourage you, to help you like feel the freedom, to help it fit your life too. And the reality is that your main starter jar is going to fizzle up and be completely used up and gone if you never put anything back into it. So I don't ever feed this jar. This is my mother starter jar, and you can look at, see, it's getting a little bit low. I really should probably scrape the sides, but anything that's extra from here is going back in here, and it lives in the fridge. And if you are feeding your starter every single day and you're feeling like a slave to it, I'm putting a link down below to a video you need to watch about how I take care of my starter. It lives in the fridge all of the time. The only time I ever take it out of the fridge is literally to scrape 50 to 100 grams out of it, and that's the only part I feed. The starter jar never disappears. It never runs dry because a portion of this, what I fed this morning, is going to go back into that jar. So just remember, if your starter has completely deflated, go back and start with the original feeding, and everything that you take out that you're not going to feed, put it in the fridge and save it. Then you can use that. This is now, anything that we put in there is now what you would call discard. Now, discard and starter, they go together and they basically all become starter again, but it's the discard from the recipe. But all of this excess you could use to make the snickerdoodle recipe that we have on our playlist. You could make the sourdough discard pancakes or waffles. There's so many things that you can use this for that you're just adding it into a recipe. It doesn't have to be fed, it doesn't have to be active, it doesn't have to be fluffy. So don't get rid of the extra. It doesn't have to be wasted. And the goal is that you're gonna get to the point that you're only feeding the amount that you're gonna use. And yes, every once in a while, oops, life happens and you don't get a chance to use it straight away, but it's okay. We're gonna put it to use in another recipe. But right now, I'm gonna scrape this into the bowl and we're gonna make let's see, what am I making today? I'm making another batch of our everyday dough that lives in the fridge so I can bake whenever I want. I'll put the link to that video down below. I'm also making a seasonal loaf, and I'm sure the video will be up on the playlist at some point soon. And we'll see what I make with the rest. But don't worry, if your starter has deflated, you can still bake. And I'm glad you're here in the kitchen. We got lots more fun baking to come.